Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Pabs, a rising VTuber and an artist, and today we are going to be doing an art fight attack. So the character that we'll be attacking today is called Clover. He, they, are, they interchangeably are a crime boss who masks his corruption behind a gentle, soft-spoken disposition and frail physique. Hang on, let me post it. There we go. That's a reference that they posted. So Spazimoto is a very cool person. They have I think I've been attacking them since like maybe year 2, year 1 of when I was doing art fight. Very fun. It's I don't know. There was something there's been like kind of a weird. This is very parasocial, but I do think like once you start interacting with like a user annually like that, there is a sort of bond that is formed. I don't know. It's just nice, and it's like somebody you're familiar with to some extent. But yeah, I actually am not sure like what composition I should be using. I was actually thinking of like having. That's a second guy. Actually, this is kind of a cool composition. Like if there's like if you have like a bodyguard character and like the main character is like posed up in front of them like this, and the bodyguard is just like standing man emoji. I think that would be actually pretty funny looking. But yeah, let's get rid of the first guy. I don't know what kind of pose this should be like, because I don't know. A lot of the poses that I have are much more animated, and he looks like very gentle, right? That's a kind of vibe that's supposed to happen. And like, for example, having this kind of why do I keep going? Stop creating new people. This is not a clone laboratory. We're an art atelier or something. I'm not sure. My stuff, I feel like you do need to have like a physical medium in order to call it an atelier. Otherwise, it's just like a studio. You know what I mean? I feel like atelier feels much more. How do you call it feels like it has much more to do with traditional art than studio does. Studio is very all-purpose. It's a very neutral term. Actually, you know what? Hang on. There's like black dog superstition. There's like a very funny looking drawing of like the black dog in folklore. Don't know. Maybe it's like in Wikimedia or something. I remember it being in like a what do you call? It was in like a public domain thing of some persuasion. This is just pictures of dogs that are black, but that's also pretty good. I mean, this one's kind of cute. It's kind of locked in, actually. Like I don't know how to put it. Like, some dogs look goofy by nature, but others are like, hang on, black dog folklore. Maybe there's something we can find around here, because I remember it wasn't this one. It was like very much a. This is closer to it. I don't know why it has snakes on top of its head. I think that's a new part. Dogs don't normally have that. I think you're supposed to train them out of that when they're puppies. Something like this. Right. Let's see. Oh, this is from Pinterest. Okay, maybe that's a little bit iffy, but you know what? That's pretty close to what I remembered seeing. Yeah, like Black Dog, Wikimedia. This bottom drawing might actually be good too. Wait, this one seems much more familiar too. Black Dog, Wikimedia? That might give us some. Oh, here we go. Wikimedia Commons Black Dog Legends. Okay, no, these aren't particularly helpful. Black Dog of Newgate. Yeah, no, there's legendary dogs. That's a great category. Hmm. Yeah, a lot of these seem to be ordinary pictures, which isn't really what I'm looking for. Cynocephaly, which is like the... What do you call? Cynocephaly are like dog people, right? Yeah. People with like animal heads. Which isn't really quite what I had in mind either. Although this could actually kind of work. This one's badass. Holy crap. Still, that's not really getting us anywhere. These are those lion statues that they have outside of, Well, I actually think the lion statues are pretty popular across East Asia, just by the way the kind of cultural influences work in that area. Which is to say, they're close together, so that's why a lot of them share certain elements. But yeah, no, I don't think any of these are particularly what we're looking for. Okay, let's do this. Let's grab this one and move on. Because this already gives me like a pretty good idea of what I want. Wait. One more thing I wanted to show before we stop this. I like how this puppy has gray hairs at such a young age. All right. I just wanted to take a look at the picture of a puppy. But now we're locked in. Okay. And I do think like the thing about this character is that I think they would not face the camera directly like this. I do think that they would be much more they would be trying to look neutral, but it would be very obvious that they are looking at you. So maybe like this and that. That's not doing quite what I expected it to. Maybe down here. Yeah, that seems good. Oh yeah, that's a nice extreme angle. Oh yeah, we've got a nice broad wingspan to work with here. Always a fan of that. Okay, so we're gonna put this 2012 Georgia Warren. Oh, hang on. This might genuinely be copyrighted. So I can't really use it as a direct reference. I don't think. Sort of. I mean, I've already seen it. No. Well, my instinct says that that's bad. That's trouble. So I'm gonna trust my instinct. So I'm just kind of gonna go with this. And actually, you know what? I just remembered something else that looks like kind of what I wanted. Hang on. It's like a... Hang on. Dog Wario Land. I sort of got... I'm not making this up. There's like a... This weird, spooky-looking dog in Wario Land. Or maybe it's not Wario Land. It's... Hang on. Black Dog Wario Land. Ah, found you. Alright. Check this out. This one's actually much closer to what I had in mind. But yeah, if we combine these two a little bit, I think that's gonna make sort of like a wolf shape. Hang on, like... Can I look up wolf silhouette? All licenses free to share, modify, and use commercially. No images found for wolf silhouette under free to modify, share, and use commercially. Are you for real? All right, then hang on. Oh yeah, Pixabay, here we go. This is actually what I wanted. I like how so many of these are howling at the moon. Perhaps sleeping in the middle of a sunny afternoon. Let's see. AI generated crap, AI generated crap. This one looks innocent. Bring out the wolf. Okay. Then I think we can more or less get started. Gonna just turn down the opacity on a couple of these. There is plenty of satisfaction to be had drawing half bodies. Okay. I do like how square his chin is too. That's a surprising contrast. You don't see that a lot. Characters who are like gentle but also have like a very strong jawline. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a nice bit of character design to have that contrast in there. Also, I am, of course, a sucker for any card suit-themed characters. I don't know, maybe it's because that horse game has had its stocks rising, but I feel like gambling is making a big comeback as an aesthetic, hopefully not as a practice. Okay, and that's gonna be like this. Okay, so this is just a very ordinary bell. So it's may got a little divot here from where it's fused together, and then it's got this. It is interesting that their collar is popped in both the ordinary dress and the working clothes. Casinos actually are pretty funny to me. First of all, as somebody who has played Fallout New Vegas, they're just like inherently funny because I just keep like sweeping them in all of my playthroughs. But I also remember actually hearing a story that involves a casino. So, fun fact, a casino screwed over this one guy, which isn't really fun, nor is it really surprising. But what is surprising is what the guy did to get back at the casino. I forget his name, but the summary of the story is that this casino had him as a customer for several years, almost like a decade, really. And, you know, they comped him stuff because, like, he kept spending money there. But eventually they were like, all right, we've gotten basically all we can out of this guy. He keeps trying to get stuff comped to him, and we can't really, it's not really, like, worth the cost. We're going to have to, like, let him go. And they did let him go. And as you can imagine, he reacted very poorly. But generally, when people react poorly to this, they post like some kind of angry review on Yelp. This guy stole dynamite from a work site near his house and made like an improvised bomb. Well, improvised is an ungenerous term for what it was. It was actually so well thought out. Like, this guy studied very meticulously like how to create this bomb. And what ended up happening is like he actually managed to build it, and he kind of basically strong-armed his two sons into helping him out. And I think he also got a couple more people involved to actually deliver the bomb. But the important thing to take away from this presentation is that he got the bomb to the casino successfully. And after he made his demands, the bomb team that was sent to dispose of it realized that it was so complex that there was basically no way they were going to be able to disarm it. Not safely, at least. Like, that's the thing. They could absolutely disarm it, but they couldn't disarm it without risking damage to the casino structure and everything else. So they had the casino evacuated. Their plan, from what I recall, was to try to set off a small explosion in the room and hope it would take out the bomb in that way. But obviously that backfired and the casino was almost completely destroyed. And thankfully they had enough time to evacuate everybody well beforehand. So that wasn't really the risk there, but the casino owner lost big time, obviously. As for the guy who built the bomb, they did end up catching him pretty easily after they put out like an arrest warrant for him, and he was unlucky enough to get spotted at a gas station nearby on his way to the drop-off point for the money. No, from what I recall, I think that he was gonna get the money because like they were like, all right, listen, you have to give this guy the money because otherwise we're not gonna have enough time to disarm the bomb. I think things kind of fell apart at some point, obviously, but yeah, they did eventually catch the guy. And from what I remember, they actually still use that super complicated homemade bomb as an example of like not an example, but as a teaching tool in like bomb defusal classes. So yeah, fascinating little story. My favorite part is that nobody really got hurt except the casino owner, and let's be real, if you own a casino, you're already kind of a scumbag. Like, because of the way that they try to, like, psychologize, or what's that word? Like, the thing that Pavlov did, like, ingrain, hang on. Pavlov. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Condition, right. The way that they try to condition their patrons is to, like, to make them think that, oh, this is a very classy place. And what they also do, I remember reading this when I was a kid, and it scared the crap out of me just because of like how much sense it made. Casinos don't have clocks. There's no clocks on the wall. Like, their purpose is to make you forget where you are for a long time, so in hopes to like just keep you there for a long time and hopefully keep you gambling. Like, casinos are essentially a masterclass in just like psychologically manipulating your customers in both ways that are beneficial and ways that are, you know, quickly apparently morally reprehensible. I remember reading in one place, don't take my word for it because my memory on this one is spotty, but like they used brightly colored screens so that the the customers couldn't actually see their own reflections in the machines. So, you know, that's cheerful. But yeah, casinos don't have clocks to make you forget where you are. They are very evil institutions. Remember, don't download gacha games. Let the gacha game get popular, watch some schmuck play it on YouTube, or get the story cutscenes, and then you can just like hop in and just like watch a story. Or if you're really desperate to play it, for whatever reason, something that's been happening more and more recently, which I'm a big fan of, is that when like gacha games like that are out of service or reach their end of service, instead of completely erasing their presence from Earth, they are repackaged as a console or computer game. And what they do then is like they remove the money transactions, so instead you can just like unlock characters through normal gameplay. I think like one of the Mega Man gachas did this actually, and I respect that infinitely more than the alternative of like having taken everybody's money and fleeing. Because I don't know, I don't have anything positive to say about gacha games, but they have given people. I know that some people hold them very dearly and hold those characters very dear to their hearts. So I believe fully that like when you retire a game, making it available in that way is the least you could do is a strong word, but it does feel much better than any alternative. Not to mention, it's not just the people who made money that put work into that. Not just the players and the people who made money off of the game who put money into the game. I'm sure the people who worked on it, developed stories for it, and created those characters have just as much of a desire to see them continue existing as anybody else. Unless they hated that character, in which case I think that would be like your ultimate sort of ironic Greek punishment, in that like I'm just imagining some guy that like fucking hates the gacha game that they work for, and you know the person's like, fuck, I hate drawing anime PNGs, and also and also like event items. I hate this shit forever. I hope it dies. And then like they announce the end of life. And he's like, and they're like, finally, yes, freedom. And then like 3 days later, it's like, good news. And thanks to the strong player response, we've decided to repackage the game as a full-fledged experience on Steam, coming to you in 2.5 months. And they're like, fuck. You know how like some people are very adamant, like others don't see their old art, or they're very ashamed of their old art. You know, I had that issue way more when I was younger, but it's more nostalgic nowadays to me. But I do know that there are some people who have that issue where they're like, fuck, I don't want to see the things that I created 3 years ago. That will haunt me forever. It's kind of like that, I imagine. But imagine if like the thing that you did for that was became like a cultural mainstay for a decade or more. And this has happened before. This is not even like an imagined scenario. We've talked about this before, like, you know, the guy from Warrant who sang Cherry Pie, or like Kurt Cobain singing Smells Like Teen Spirit. You know, that shit haunts you forever. I don't know. I do think it is a little bit funny. Like, it's not good that it happens, but I do think it is at least a little bit funny. I do sympathize a lot with people who have something that they are working on that they didn't expect to blow up. Like, I feel like there are occasions where, like, somebody blows up, and it's everything that they wanted and more. Like, I remember when Little Nas X got really popular back in 2018, 2019. He seemed to handle that shit like a champ, even though he was like, what, 19 at the time? I don't know. Either he had a hell of a poker face, which is entirely possible, or he just really was ready for that shit. You know, there are people who do thrive in those environments. But then I remember seeing like, I remember seeing this tweet from this person called Gooseworks, who, if you've never heard of Gooseworks before, they're the creative mind behind a digital web series called The Amazing Digital Circus that is hugely popular. It is. I'm not even like super into the scene, and I'm almost certain that it's like one of the biggest success stories in indie web animation of the last 5-10 years or so. And they very vocally expressed, it's terrifying having my name to attach to this like huge thing that has been blown completely out of proportion, out of my original expectations. I'm so scared. And I think that's so valid. Something that I've heard some indie creators express, especially ones that have come back from an environment where they did have exposure to that huge, crazy, nutso success, is that they felt more at home in a situation where they had fewer viewers, where it was like more manageable, where, you know, they had a little bit more control, where things felt a little bit less like a frantic crosswalk and more like, you know, a more kind of like stable platform, you know, less like a scramble crosswalk and more like, you know, a somewhat busy train station, something like that. But it's something that I think about a lot, in that it's very difficult to measure success outside of those numbers as a streamer. I do think that like streaming and a lot of creative pursuits, quite frankly, that we adopt as hobbies are the kind where like numbers and validation matter a lot. And you know that's partially a good thing and partially a not a great thing. Like it's partially a good thing because it forces you to not just create things outside of yourself, but also share them with others by necessity. You're not gonna become a digital artist if, well, no, you can't become a digital artist if you never post stuff. But in order to kind of put yourself in a community, in order to become somebody in the digital world, you do need to kind of like, get out there. You need to talk to people. You need to let them see what you got, see where you're at, what your inspirations come from, what things you have to say. And in a lot of cases, they actually like it. A lot of people are very easy to please, including myself. I'll admit that I'm mostly thinking of myself when I'm saying that, but it's not untrue in that as long as you are halfway funny or entertaining, and you're able to produce stuff consistently, you will find success. Not easily, but it is way more likely than someone who doesn't share their things and doesn't. This hair is fucking me up. But yeah. Anyway, this is all to say that it is fascinating how time and time again we see when people are just I don't know. I do think the internet has facilitated this to an insane degree because it still happened even before the internet, right? Like you would be playing at a bar someplace and a person from like a famous record label would just happen to be there that night and would be like, listen, I really like your sound. I will give you my business card. Ring me up if you want me to produce your records. And that happens sometimes. That was like a dream for a lot of bands because that was like their big break because once you get like a record deal, right, you have a more stable source of income. You have people who are connected and are able to produce CDs for you and are able to finance that and support you in that way. You hear it a lot that managers are an invaluable resource for creative people because they have the ability to not just like manage the stuff that they're the people that they're in charge of, that they're responsible for. They don't just have the ability to let them focus on the work that they need to do to continue being an artist, but they also have that specialty that lets the artist get their stuff out in a much more efficient way. Because like I said, it has never been easier to accidentally go viral. But, that's still not the same as having a dedicated marketing team who are able to produce stuff for you to advertise your existence. Hey, Leah, how you doing? Sweating. Oh, is it hot where you are? It's a little muggy over here too. We were supposed to have a storm the other day today, but thankfully it didn't come to pass. It rained a lot earlier, but it thankfully was just like light rain. Gave 3 stinkies a bath today. My cat, my dog, and me. Aww. Good work, though. I'm sure. I'm sure your pets. Okay, appreciate is a strong word, but I'm sure your pet. I'm sure your pets benefited from that greatly. Okay, and God, I really like this guy's Clover shaped monocle. I hate the guy from Guilty Gear, Happy Chaos. He sucks to play against and has ruined basically every major he's been in just because he's so boring to watch. But I will say his X-shaped sunglasses are so goddamn cool. God, I remember I drew Happy Chaos before I started playing Guilty Gear, I think. Because I remember I picked up Guilty Gear Strive on a whim. Yeah, hang on. Hang on. I gotta check something real quick. Because, let's see. I have that guy's file. I thought you were already playing. I don't remember if I was at the time. Hang on. I have a very easy way of checking this. So that was like almost directly after I finished October, right. Okay, so it looks like the file that okay, so this drawing of Happy Chaos that I made was from 2021 and it was produced December 2nd. And I picked up Guilty Gear Strive. When did I pick up Guilty Gear Strive? Go into Steam. Guilty Gear Strive. Yeah, that was a really good stream, honestly. All right, let's see. Last played November 12th, 2024. That doesn't matter. Hang on. Activity. Properties. Manage. Mark as private. Browse local files. Properties? Yeah, no, my art style has changed a lot since then. I think like a lot of it was that I switched to aliased art. Yeah, no, like, and also I don't think I really understood rendering back here back at this point. Like, this is really good shading work, but it's not how I would do it for a lot of this stuff. I would probably do something different for that gun too, but that gun was. Oh fuck! I fucked up the shading there. Bro, no, listen, this was I'm actually looking up if this was before I started playing Guilty Gear. Hang on, okay. Hang on. Guilty Gear Strive. How do you check properties? No. Oh wait, here we go. Information. Okay, release date June 11, 2023. When was the first time I played this fucking game? Let me get it away from this guy for a second, just so we don't have to look at his face. Hang on. Googling on how to check when you bought a game on Steam. Helps and tips, account details, purchase history. Purchase history, huh? Let's see. Recent activity. How do I... Hang on. God damn it. There has to be an easier way to do that. Oh, hang on. Click on the game icon to open its page and check the purchase details section. Locate the game in question. Click on the game icon. Okay, open its store page, I guess? Yada yada yada. Purchase details. I don't know where to find that. Wait, no, actually, and there's another way to carbon date this. I remember I bought the game because my buddy Preston wanted to play it with me at some point. And I was like, sorry, I don't got it. But then I was like, you know what? I could have it though. So I went and bought it, and let me see if I can find. Hang on, Strive. Huh. Okay. August 15th, 2022. Almost a full 8 months after I drew the Happy Chaos art is when I picked up Guilty Gear Strive. I am vindicated. I did not I did not draw Happy Chaos before I played the game. Or after I played the game. Thank God. I think if I drew Happy Chaos after playing the game and after fighting him, I might have needed to go into witness protection. And that makes sense too, because I remember some of the earliest stuff that I did with my friend Preston on that game was actually like doing like parries with still like that he looks like he's covered in termites. Yeah, he's definitely not a guy who looks like he knows what the business end of a bar of soap looks like. You can say that for a lot of guys in Strive, but him especially. Like, you got Leo Whitefang, you got friggin' Soul Bad Guy, you got Sin Kisk. I don't think any of those guys really, like, bathe all that much. I mean, that's my assumption. Also, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this, monocle on another layer so I can focus on just the eyes for now. I should at some point get off my ass and watch the woolly summary of Guilty Gear lore, and also what the hell what even happens in Guilty Gear Strive. I should do that, but I don't know when I'm gonna do it. Also, I just realized now that the smile's a little crooked. Maybe making it a little less wide, too. Just watch the rulers and have that be your only experience? I don't know about that. The only experience that I've had with Ultraman was this fucked up, like, that one fucked up miniseries that V and J watched one time, where it was like a bunch of different Ultramen coming in hot at one point. And I remember feeling genuinely physically sick when that happened. So I don't think I'm built for that kind of lifestyle. Now that's different. In what regard? How is it materially different? I don't know. I feel like a bummer for being rendered physically ill by Ultraman. I feel like that's the kind of shit that should get you. I don't know. That's like saying you hate like puppies or something. I don't know. It feels wrong to me somehow. Like, that's Ultraman. He's gonna save the day. Why am I repulsed by him? Ultraman can be experienced normal in like most Guilty Gears. You gotta work for that shit. I do feel like becoming well versed in any fighting games lore at this point is especially like any fighting game that has a history before 2000s is like absolutely the kind of shit that should get you that should be a cause for concern for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, if you know the complete history of Street Fighter, I fear it might be too late. Like, I feel like being able to know the entire history of Street Fighter is like the kind of shit that like you would have to. It's like some shit in like a H.P. Lovecraft novel where they need some insane mage who has supernatural clout in order to solve their problems for them. You know, that's like a that's like that last guy who knows ninjutsu but decided to let the school die out so the art of killing cannot be passed on. The smile doesn't look vicious enough. I do notice that he doesn't bare his teeth in any of these references, so maybe they're just the kind of person who doesn't really do toothy smiles. Maybe just a small open mouth. That's also not right, because it looks more smug than anything else. Just giving him a little frowny face made this look so disgusted with us. Hang on. If I keep making curves, one of them will work at some point. Monkey to typewriter type grind set. Never doubt. Never stop gambling. It is uproariously funny to me that all my best friends have become horse race gamblers, playing Uma Musume, and I'm over here I'm going back to the well on this fucking Peak game because I've somehow become deeply entrenched in I've become deeply invested in beating that game on any of the days. I don't know why. This isn't a particularly rare phenomenon, but have you ever had something that pissed you off in like such a specific way where you would feel like you have done yourself a disservice by backing down from it? You know what I mean? Like, that game had such an awful first impression on me. You're a beast, my dude, at speed arting. Thank you, Bunny. Hello, how you doing? Cannot for the fucking life of me figure out what this guy's smile should look like. The eye proportions seem okay, but I'm gonna round out the corner of this hairstyle. There we go. Good. It's funny I took info from you to look up refs for poses to do art. Nice! It helps a lot, right? Like, sometimes it's really good to just like come up with a pose from your own. Like sometimes you'd really just gotta like attack a canvas and feel it out that way. But a lot of the times, if you're not sure about it yourself, if you don't know what you want it to look like, having a reference or having like a basis to go off of is so useful. Okay, I think this might be the move. Just minimize mouth. Bro is like the surface area of bro's face is gonna be maybe 10 and 5% lip. I was drawing blank, but looking at poses gave me a push. Awesome. That's great to hear. I'm glad things are going more smoothly for you. Okay, then over here. Maybe just a tiny bit more of a curve. Maybe just a teeny tiny little bit more of a curve. There we go. I do think we are going to have to use the casino outfit, but then that removes part of the bow. Maybe I should just like give up on the Clover. No, the Clover monocle is kind of heat. You know what? A little bit of mix and match never hurt nobody. A little bit of mix and match never hurt nobody. Okay. Alright, let's use that. Then merge these together. But yeah, I don't know. I cannot stress enough how funny it is to me that all of my friends are like getting invested into like into like these horse girls. I'm over here climbing this stupid fucking mountain out of spite. I don't know. I feel like there's almost like a parable in here somewhere. But you know what? I feel like for as much as I am joking about that, while I'm out here climbing a literal mountain, my friends have to climb a metaphorical one. That mountain normally being Gold Ship, from what I understand, or Ugari Cap, or whoever else the fuck. Apparently, half of them are getting terrorized by this fucking 5-year-old looking horse called Nishino Flower, and I do think that is hilarious. Yeah, you know that trained athlete that you've been nurturing for the past 3 years? Yeah, this 5-year-old's gonna beat the crap out of them, and handily. I don't know, it's just universally funny whenever a baby mocks the fuck out of someone. Oh yeah, I should make my brush size a little bit smaller. I found that that's been helping me a lot, is just trying to go for a much smaller brush size whenever I can. I don't know what implications that should have for me, but it's been helping a little bit. I think it's almost like a more advanced version of this thing that I've been doing with the Gaussian blur here, where I've been using that trick to just make it easier for myself to be a little bit more free with my lines. And I think using a smaller brush size after the sketch has had a similar, smaller effect where it's like I have a little bit more wiggle room now. And I can, you know, I can do more sick stuff with it. Okay, bring this one down over here. God. I feel... Something that I've been feeling a little bit weird about recently is that I feel like I've started to lose touch with, like, the streamers that got me into the VTubing game to begin with. Or, you know, the kind of streamers that I was like, dang, these guys are kind of like at the peak. Because, like, I feel like yesterday I tuned into a stream by some of the Hololive girls, and I had to like tap out at like half an hour in, and it felt very strange. It feels like when something just isn't fun for you anymore, right? It feels super weird whenever that happens. It's obviously not a great feeling, but it's also like if it goes well, it's like a weird feeling, but it's a good thing, right? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you're like, this isn't fun anymore, and then that's like a sign that you need to kind of reevaluate where you're at, because like this thing that should be fun isn't fun for you anymore. But on the other times, it's like this thing isn't fun for me anymore because I just don't vibe with it anymore. It doesn't entertain me as much as it used to, and I think whenever you have that kind of realization, it's much, I don't know, it's easier to grow from that. I also felt a little bit out of touch because one of them just kept repeating the word Labubu over and over. I had to Google what one of those things was. I'm not hip with the kids anymore ever since I deleted social media. But again, when I realized that, instead of feeling like I should be panicked about it, I just felt a little bit of like relief. Like, you know what? It's okay because I don't really care about it. Doesn't affect me. Unless one of those little troll doll looking bastards starts walking up and trying to attack me with a knife like Chucky, then it really is just like an outside context problem to me. Yeah. This weekend I actually managed to finish a couple of books that I had been meaning to polish off. I had one called 50 Portraits You Should Know, which I didn't catch the name of the author, but it was very useful for finding out more about like both medieval painters and also more postmodern painters. Like I learned about this guy that I really liked. Forgot his name, but I remember the name of the painting. The painting was called The Green Stripe. Hang on, The Green Stripe. Henry Matisse is the name of the artist. And The Green Stripe is a really striking painting because of the fact... Hang on, let me put a picture of it up on screen. So this is The Green Stripe by Henry Matisse. It's a portrait, I believe, of Madame Matisse. And what I really liked about it was, first of all, the use of color to imply light. How she has like a big stripe of green running right down her head to kind of show where like the light is hitting the shadow. Very cool effect. And also the brush strokes, how they create a lot of texture in the face just by their direction. It reminds me a little bit of those like anatomical models that have like the skin ripped off. But yeah, it was very useful for learning about stuff like that, which I don't normally get a lot of exposure to. So I definitely got my time's worth out of that one. The other book that I read was called Lying for Money by Dan Davies, I believe the name of the author was. And it was like a small compilation history of financial fraud throughout the ages, and mostly in like recent memory, like from the 80s onwards. It went in a weird kind of pendulum because it went from a company called Z Best Cleaners in the 80s, and it kind of covered other scams from that time, which were reliant on now outdated systems. Like for example, Z Best did a lot of its fraud through this thing called check kiting, which is no longer possible due to just how bank technology has evolved. And there was another one that they discussed called OPM leasing, which I really found charming because OPM seems to have stood for other people's money. They later claimed it was other people's machines, but them calling your company other people's money and then going all in on the fraud game for that is kind of legendary. All right, let's simplify these lines. Convert a couple of those corners. I'm gonna drink some water real quick. Hang on. It was also a little bit funny reading the book about fraud. How much respect is the wrong word. How hyped he was to talk about Ponzi, because after reading the chapter, I kind of got it too. Like I kind of understood why he was excited to talk about it, because it was a very elegant little scam. So if you've never, okay, I feel like most of us, pardon me, have heard of what a Ponzi scheme is. But if you've never heard of a Ponzi scheme before, the idea is to, at its most basic, it is a scheme where you convince somebody to invest money in you, either through ordinary charms, or like you have some leverage against them or something, whatever. But the point of the matter is, you get somebody to give you money, and you tell them, I am going to turn this money into way more money. Trust me. And what you do is that then you go out and you convince other people that, hey, I've got this money and I'm going to turn it into way more money. Why don't you give me some of your money too? And they believe you, and then you use the money you get from those new people to pay off the first guy. That is a gross oversimplification, but that is more or less what it is. It is very similar in that definition to a pyramid scheme, but they are slightly different in that a Ponzi scheme is one guy managing everything, whereas a pyramid scheme is more like a virulent plague. Yeah. My brain is both following and going, I understand, doesn't understand. That's what I felt like too during a lot of during the later parts of the book, because I had been reading for like 5 hours at that point, and this guy was explaining some very high concept shit to me, and I was like, okay. like I was just like drooling at the mouth a little bit, and just like brain fried from overthinking. But yeah, very fascinating book. And the thing about the Ponzi scheme, the way it originated is hilarious, because what the Ponzi scheme was based on itself was questionably legal, but they never got in trouble for it. One, because Ponzi was very good at convincing people that his ideas were correct, and he was able to be like, it's actually not that big a deal that I'm doing this. And they were like, you know what? Now that he's talked us through it, I actually don't think it's that big of a deal. And the second reason why he never got in trouble for that specifically was also because he never actually did it. So the foundation of the Ponzi scheme is as follows. Back in the era when he was operating, there were international letters that you could basically like buy in any country, and you can use them to mail. You could use them to send postage internationally. Easy enough. What Ponzi realized is that these were scaled to value in their respective countries. So if you bought an envelope in the US and somebody else bought an envelope in, say, Italy, the person who bought it in Italy would probably be paying a little bit less than you are, because they are, the currency is a little bit less strong than what the US dollar was at the time. And Ponzi realized this. Ponzi realized that his family back in Italy could buy these international mailing cards for way cheaper than he could. So he got himself an idea. And the most important thing about this as well, bear in mind, is not only that they could buy them cheaper, but once he had his hands on them, he could convert them to money. So the idea that Ponzi sold people on was as follows. He would take their invested money, he would send it to his relatives in Italy, who would then buy a bunch of this international postage, and they would mail that postage to him, so that then he could exchange it for normal US dollars at a profit. because, the money that he put into it bought way more postage than he actually got back. Again, there were actually a lot of systems in place to ensure that a scheme like this couldn't work. But the most important thing is that Ponzi's victims didn't know that, and also, again, Ponzi never actually didn't committed to this plan because he was too busy scamming people. So it's really funny how that panned out. I see the humor in it for sure. Of course, this all kind of went belly up when, ironically enough, the first guy that Ponzi conned was like, "Hey, wait a minute! All these other people, I'm getting word on the street from these other people that Ponzi's like hugely successful now. He's full of shit. I'm gonna expose that fraud," and he did. And then Ponzi went to prison, or something else happened. I don't remember what happened to Ponzi. He almost certainly went to prison though. But the author was hard glazing on Ponzi. I'm not gonna lie. He compared a pyramid scheme to Ponzi by saying like the Ponzi scheme is like an elegant Venetian palazzo compared to like the rock huts that are pyramid schemes. So he had a very high opinion of the man himself, even if he appreciated that what he was doing was unethical. But a lot of stuff can get very difficult to follow if you don't have like enough time to look into it. Like when he started explaining the idea of rogue traders, my head just started spinning. Another funny thing that I learned from that book is, okay, so there is a software called Bloomberg Terminal. If you've ever heard of Bloomberg, they are a firm that specializes in publishing up-to-date financial information and are generally the go-to guys when you want stock pricing. Stock pricing data, specifically. I don't think they actually float stocks themselves, or like they don't really assist with that process. They might, and I might just be mistaken, but that's not the crux of their business. In fact, I looked it up just today, and the crux of their business is now producing Bloomberg terminals, which are these. They can't be hardware. They can't be hardware. They can be attached to hardware, but it's mostly computer programs as a subscription service. And what they have, their benefit is that they have really up-to-date financial information, and that's basically it. That's all that Bloomberg terminals have going for them, is that they have like some of the most up-to-date financial information in the world. So they are very valuable for people like day traders and people who specialize in like monitoring stocks and whatnot. And more excitingly, I found out that they have a built-in chat function with other traders, which makes a lot of sense. But I got curious about like if there was like specific chat etiquette or like typing quirks that happened in the Bloomberg terminals. And to my delight, there is. Like instead of saying like K or okay or whatever, they say ACK, like acknowledged. And for whatever reason, it's very common to text like very 2000s flip phone-y, like saying hi or like bye. Like just very short 2-letter repetitions. Apparently those are also very much the culture and the norm in those spaces. It's fucking fascinating to me on a lot of levels. First of all, in that it seems like their language is very much stuck in the past, or, stuck in some other kind of context. And also because, like, it feels like it's almost like a time capsule of the early 2000s when it was established. It's also very exciting to me from a kind of hardware perspective, because like I said, They do still do it, but mostly it's sold as software these days. The subscription service for Bloomberg Terminal. But back in the day, they called it Bloomberg Terminal because it was literally a terminal you would buy that had like a license to run the program on it. And they used to like literally have to sell you multiple terminals. Like they priced it by the number of terminals you wanted, because back then Windows hadn't been invented yet. So one screen could only run one program at a time. Bill Gates and Microsoft in general are fucking super jobbers nowadays, but they did basically introduce the fucking backbone of managing multiple programs at a time. It's also really funny how during the book, the author also took time to take quick pot shots and stuff like Silicon Valley, and kind of point out very fairly so that a lot of the differences between like these very legitimate businesses and these outright scams is that the businesses are like the successful ones, whereas the scams eventually failed. Otherwise, they operate so similarly that it's almost impossible for an innocent person to tell the difference. There are obviously signs. For example, there's always that golden rule of if it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't true. But for most people who invest in these things, it really does just look like a weirdly aggressively growing company. And, they think it's their big chance. That's also why, despite being technically pyramid schemes, multi-level marketing schemes are still considered legitimate businesses. Because theoretically, they do have all the trademarks that they need. Like, they have a product that they actually sell in most of them. They have things like that. But if you ask anybody on the street, hey, do you think Amway is a scam? They would say, absolutely, it's a scam. What the hell are you talking about? It's just so fascinating from a sociological perspective. But yeah, as it turns out, the first tech demo of Windows was basically like a pre-recorded video of them like doing what the program would be like, because at that stage they hadn't fully developed it yet. And it's just really funny to see how little things have changed from then and now. Like, you know all those video game trailers that show like all trailer, no gameplay? Or like if they do show the gameplay, it's like it seems weirdly not gameplay. Like it looks like it's like just somebody putting together a 3D movie that it's supposed to look like a video game. The more things change, the more they stay the same, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, great little read. I really like the book. It helps that I'm personally fascinated by this topic. So if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. The issue as well is that not only is it that in a lot of cases it is more or less indistinguishable from a sincere business, it's that a lot of the time the people who are trying to like tell others that having the ability to tell that something is a scam, especially when it's at a high level like this, is rare. Like, very rarely can you just look at some numbers and be like, yeah, this smells like a scam. Because like that would require you to like stop and think first and like, be interested in it actively and do legwork to look into it. So there's that barrier. And then the second barrier is the fact that even if you do have this skill and you do have the opportunity to tell that something is a scam just from the numbers alone, there might be other factors, there might be things that like confuse it. Even if you do manage to detect that, it's very rare that people listen to you. Like the author showed a few. I forgot to draw his entire fucking arms. They're just out here floating like a torso. Hang on. The eye on the left looks a little weird. Okay, I think I see the issue. It's also fascinating because I learned that like a banknote fraud that went on in Portugal back in the early 40s or like mid 50s ended up being like a major contributing factor to the installation of a fascist government in that country. There's just like so many weirdly connected dots that you don't really even think about because you don't. First of all, never knew that Portugal had a time phase when it was controlled by a fascist regime. But then it was very much a 1-2 punch for me for that one. First of all, learning that Portugal had a time phase when it was controlled by a fascist regime, and second of all, learning that a major contributing factor was one dude basically doing the equivalent of like when you take an F that your teachers gave you and turn it into an A by adding an extra line. For a little bit of context, that particular incident ended up having to do with one of Portugal's colonies, I believe, Angola. And a dude from Angola realized that the currency that they print in Angola and the currency they print in Portugal looks literally exactly the same, except the one that is made in Angola just says made in Angola, and the one made in Portugal says made in Portugal, and the one made in Portugal is infinitely worth more money. So he decided to take control of like one of the banks, or like he basically managed to bluff his way into authorizing the printing of several dozen Portuguese notes and using those to get him and his accomplices rich. Of course, he got a little bit greedy and it ended up blowing up in his face. But a lot of the outrage and economic fallout from that, from the devaluation of the Portuguese currency, was what led for the opportunity for the fascist regime to install itself. So yeah, fascinating little chain of cause and effect. Okay, so we're gonna add the shirt stripe here. Okay, then over here. Are these supposed to be like rings, or I guess they're just normal shirt cuffs, huh? Or sleeve cuffs, I guess. I guess if that's the case, I should maybe not make them look like rings. But they still have that sort of general shape. I could use this as an indent rather than a... Hang on. Like making it go out like that. Yippee. Okay. Actually, that was really smooth. Let me try that for this arm, too. Let's see how that goes. But yeah, it was very muggy today because of the fact that that storm was supposed to happen. But thankfully, we got off with just some decently heavy rain in the afternoon. I was really worried there because I went to the office to work today, but thankfully it didn't seem to be that big of a deal. However, I did take the opportunity to clock out a little bit earlier than usual because it had just stopped raining when it hit 5 o'clock, and I was like, "All right, I'm gonna take my chance." I don't want to get caught in the rain. So I clocked out at a very reasonable time today, which was a big benefit for me. Okay, then I'll erase this part here. Perfect. And we just need to make the sleeve over here. Maybe move it down just a little bit. There we go. Oh yeah. So I checked I filed my taxes successfully this year, which is not something to be particularly proud of, but it bears mentioning because it's relevant to the story that I'm about to tell. I checked my back then I got a pretty good tax return because of the fact that I had taken some courses during the year, and I was able to claim those for an education credit. But separate to that, what the government does is when they deem that some of your money has been, when a little bit too much of your money has been put into the market because of like harmonized goods and sales and taxes and, you know, goods and services taxes, basically. When they decide that a little bit too much of your money has gone into the market that way, they actually give you a refund for that. And it's automatic. You get as long as you file your taxes, you are eligible for that. And it's pretty great. It's saved my bacon a couple of times before. The other day, I got a message from Tax Canada, basically being like, "Yo, you've got a new message." And I'm like, "Ah, sweet. I'm guessing that's probably about like the GST HST refund. Let me take a look." Do you know how much money they gave back to me? And they had to like bother me with a whole message about it. $8. 8 Canadian dollars. That's like $4 in US money, by the way. Oh yeah, thanks, Government of Canada. I really appreciate that. It's just such a comically small amount of money to like, bro, you can keep it. Fuck it, it's on the house. Like literally, I think it would cost you more money to mail me the check for the money than it would for you to just fucking keep it. Oh god. It's such a ridiculously small amount of money these days. And that used to be like a decent amount of money. Like you could be like, oh yeah, I could get myself like an extra side at a restaurant next time I'm out with that sort of money. Like nowadays, that doesn't even get you a bag of chips and a drink. Which says more about the cost of bag of chips and drinks nowadays than it does like about that particular return. But come on. Again, I'm not even mad about it. It's just such a comically small amount of money. Ah, I seem to have forgotten their other hand. That's okay. The pirate way will always be there for them. Yarr. All right, good. Where's my planning layer? There it is. I do think that having pirate characters that have like a hook for a hand is awesome. I do think like having a prosthesis like that is like both functional and usable as a weapon is awesome. And I think Mad Max got a very good balance of that with Furiosa, where her thing was like this like metallic arm thing that she could, she could like manipulate that a little bit. She could make it useful for driving. She could like whack people over the head with it. Actually, I don't think she ever did that in the movie, which makes a lot of sense because if that's your like main prosthesis, you don't want to be fucking around with that too much. I mean, like, yeah, you could probably like jerry rig yourself a new one, but like, first of all, not the greatest circumstances for that, and also, even if you could jerry rig that, it's still a pain in the butt to replace. Okay, then over here. All right, is that everything? That looks like everything. Crunchy wrists. Sometimes when you are really focused on something and you like lock in on it for a long time, you end up pretty stiff. That's why it's also important to drink a lot of water, because then even if you are stiff, you will have to go to the bathroom every 20 minutes. Pro tip. If you want to maintain good circulation and leg strength, just keep hydrating. The water won't actually do anything, but it will make you pee a lot. I do like that, and I do like them with a ponytail. Okay. Let's bump up the opacity on this. And get to work. On a different layer, because this layer has a reference on it. Oh yeah. In my recommendeds, I got a video about an indie game called I Want to Be the Guy that I remember hearing about a long, long time ago, but never actually like interacting with in any meaningful capacity. And watching the video, I was flabbergasted by the sheer number of references there were to Guilty Gear. The person who made the game was like a Guilty Gear fan at the time. And I don't know, I just didn't expect that to happen. I didn't expect Soul Bad Guy to be there. Soul Bad Guy wasn't in the game per se, but like there was a lot of music that was repurposed from Guilty Gear. But yeah, very cool little video. It's always a very valuable thing when somebody goes and does a deep dive on something that you were vaguely curious about but never really bothered to check up on. I don't know, it's like a little Christmas gift to you. Okay, then over here. Yeah, it's one of those games where like a lot of the gameplay was very trial and error because everything in the room wanted to kill you, or like it was meant to be a troll, right? The game was supposed to be trollish about its particular presentation and its gameplay, and I can appreciate that. I don't particularly enjoy those kinds of games. I remember when CAD Mario was very popular. It got big for me during middle school, and I just did not understand the appeal of it. Like, it's one thing if a game suddenly turns very difficult and demands a lot of you, because at that point I had already been invested, and I'm like, yeah, all right, let's do this. I'm willing to risk it for the biscuit. But when it like kind of messes with you out of the gate like that, I find it very difficult to hang on. I also need another thingy here. Okay, plonk this down here, grab this red, fill this out, and then the skin tone. This guy looks so much more sinister with black hair. It's kind of crazy. Oh yeah. Also from that book about fraud, I learned where the word stock comes from. So back in the day before they had paper receipts and whatnot, what you would do to mark down a transaction with someone is you would take a little bit of stick, the stick would be as big as you needed it to be, really. And what you would do is that you would carve out notches on the stick. Like 2 finger widths for like 1,000, 1 finger width for 100, half a finger width for 10, and so on and so forth. And the point of this was that what you would then do with a stick, and like if it was like less than 1/10 of a dollar, you could just like cut into the stick. No need to like cut out a chunk or nothing. Anyway, what you would then do with the stick is you would split it lengthwise, so 2 copies of the same chunks and carvings would remain on the stick. One that you would keep and one that the vendor or your customer would keep. And this is what eventually these became known as stocks, and that meaning got kind of like carried forward, I suppose, when they started using paper. Or specifically for the purposes of like keeping track of ownership of companies, I suppose. But yeah, that's fun. I don't know. I really like older versions of currency before we had modern banking technology and whatnot. Like, they had such ingenious little moves that I always find it interesting to learn about, even if I'm glad that we don't use such currencies anymore. Like, could you imagine being in like one of those societies that had to use like wooden tag currencies, and then like your bully's like, "Yo, shake them, grab them by the legs and shake them upside down," and like you would hear like a fucking maraca type noise coming from your pockets from like your wooden tags. I don't know. Obviously, we don't use coins that much either, so the charm of that has also been lost to the sands of nostalgia. But I don't know. There's something really funny about the idea of it being wooden tags, specifically being what does it. What is their eye color? Aha. I really like the photo overlay back here too. I don't know, it looks really good with how everything's put together. But yeah, it's crazy to think that games like those, where the point of it was to get frustrated, created more or less the YouTuber meta for the next 20 years. That is only barely exaggerating. We still have, like, quote-unquote rage games. Except now that they've become a little bit more refined. They've gotten more clever. Occasionally, they've gotten more Australian in the case of that one Bennett Foddy game. Yeah, I think to really emphasize the kind of threatening nature of it, I think the best idea is to have the light coming in from below. And the good news is that because we use a 3D model as a reference for this, that's actually going to be pretty easy to figure out. What we'll need to do is just put these in a separate little folder. Put these in a separate little folder. Go back to this. Grab the light source, and then... Oh, yeah. There we go. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste this, rasterize that, and we're going to shrink it down over here so we have a good reference for like where the lights and shadows would head. Okay. I'm really grateful whenever the character doesn't have like a super complex pattern thrown around in there. There was an attack I did yesterday for someone that had a character that had like this very specific pattern on his sleeves. And I could not at a distance tell what the hell that pattern was supposed to be, so I just kind of guessed at it. Because it didn't resemble any pattern that I knew of. Okay, so it's going to come in like this. Okay, and this is going to come in like this. Okay, and it's going to kind of slowly dissipate until we get up here. I think we can more or less avoid having light until kind of up around here. He's supposed to be not very well built, so having such a clear pec line like this doesn't make sense to me for him. If you're evil, you don't get to have big pecs. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them draconically. Okay, and then that's gonna... Oh, actually I missed a spot here, hang on. Okay, then over here. Gonna do something for the cloth here in the middle too. It does feel weird how much like the top light layer this is gonna look like for a little while. You know what I mean? It looks a little bit already like the light is coming in from the top, but you know, little by little we'll get there. Oh, this means that the lapels aren't symmetrical. God damn it. Hang on. Right, because if one shows a little bit of the shirt going under, then the other one should have to show that too. At least a little bit. Not necessarily to the same extent. Still, that feels a little bogus. Okay. What was I doing? Right, the shading for the chest. Okay, bring this in here. And I've just realized now as well that because of the lapel, I can add a little bit more of a shadow here. Remembering songs that you heard like once or twice can be such a loaded gun. Because sometimes you remember enough about the song to easily find it. Like you'll remember the chorus and you'll just be able to look up the lyrics. But other times it's much more difficult. Like I remember listening to like this happy hardcore song a long time ago. And I remember it just being vaguely pirate themed. And I was like 80% sure this one artist called Searle made it. I was like, all right, Searle pirate song, right into the Google as you do, and I did not find its song. I found a song called Captain Coke, which had a very different which I feel like I would have remembered if that was the song. Very nice song though, very catchy. I did eventually find it though. It was called The Flying Dutchman. But yeah, good song. Oh shoot, this isn't... Hang on. There's more lapel here than I thought. How about that? Okay, then over here. It's a nice scratchy shadow here. We'll do something similar for the leaves of the shirt. Okay. I'm not gonna lie, I had this whole idea where I would draw like the wolf in the background. I think I might have to abandon ship on that front. Do we have... Okay, we have a little bit of light on the hitting the hands. So more or less like this. Right? Yeah, I thought as much. Okay, let's see how that goes. Oh yeah, that's looking clean. Actually, I might add just a little bit of a shadow right here. Yeah, that goes pretty well. Okay. Okay, and then that's gonna come in like this. Okay, then over here. God, I remember seeing the first trailers for that Superman movie. They've started making early. They've started rolling out the early screenings for the new James Gunn Superman movie. Everybody's very excited about it, but I feel like it was just yesterday that it got announced, and all of a sudden it's real. It's real, and people are. It's a movie that people are watching. I forgot about the hashtag loaded gun. Okay, then over here. No, that's not right. Wait, I know what I need to do. Okay, so I'm just gonna pair off a little bit here. Just chisel it away a little bit. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add more light here. Like this is the part that's coming out into the light. Yes, okay. Marvelous. But yeah, I don't know. This feels like something of a nothing burger week, if I'm being honest. Like, I feel like every other week something was weighing on the back of my head, or like there was something else that needed to be done, or something urgent that needed to be accomplished, or something that I needed to prepare for. This week is just kind of you know? It's like, yeah, there's stuff to do, but it's not like, I don't feel like I'm in jeopardy or anything. It's important to have those, though. Like, a week where just nothing's really going on. For you personally, like, obviously stuff is going on outside of our smaller spheres of influence. Besides, it is a little bit of a relief that I don't have to run around like a chicken with its head cut off for a minute. Oh yeah, speaking of that idiom, the song Bird Brain by Jamie Page is absolute heat. I saw it. I've been following Jamie Page ever since I think Butcher Vanity happened, and I really like their work on. Don't know their pronouns. I really like their work on Rod for Cloud and other Teto songs, but honestly, it's a really good song. Okay. Gonna use the same shade for this section here. Okay, and they're just gonna have a tiny little bit of light hitting the bit of the collar here. I don't know, maybe I need to go check out more books at the library so I have that rush of needing to finish reading them again. I don't know. I felt pretty locked in during that period. Maybe I need more of that in my life. Clearly, it's given me things to talk about, so it can't be. It could only be beneficial to binge read a 200-page book in a weekend. Well, no, the book was technically more like 250 pages. I had already made some progress on it, but yeah, that's more or less how much of it I read in one sitting. Felt good though. I felt like I was back in my glory days of where I would like read a huge book in like a matter of days. Looking back on that, that was probably a sign that there was something that I needed to address besides my voracious appetite for literature. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you look back at a period and like, okay, was I really productive or was I just like in some kind of panic mode? And most often the answer is a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Gonna redo that shadow real quick. Could use a little bit more vibrancy in that too. There we go. What we can do here is just expand that by 1 pixel and then add a gradient. No, that looks weird. That looks very weird. Why does that look weird? Yeah, that's a little better if I'm being honest. I think it's a matter of finishing the job. You know what I mean? I think as soon as I finish shading the rest of the face, it's going to look better. I think having that light trick that I learned the other day was also going to be helpful for that. Okay. Save me, color, save me. And it does. Real. Coloring is a real test of faith to see whether or not you're going to be able to trust the process or not. This is that part in the team building exercise where you go backwards and you have to trust the other person to catch you. Also need to add some lighter tones to the bottom here. Not like that though, that makes it look a little bit too plasticky. So maybe more like... yeah, like that. There are days when like more painterly style rendering does feel very seductive to me. Like I'll be like, no, it's cell shading for ride or die. But then like I'll be like, man, I could really use some fucking blending up in here. You have to temper it. You have to temper it. Okay, then over here, like this. Okay. I do picture this being like almost like a very silky texture. Okay, there we go. Perfect. That honestly is looking pretty good. I might also need to add a little bit of extra oomph back here. Yeah, I think just layering the different shadings on here is gonna do the vest a lot of good. Just to be visually interesting. Might fuck around a little bit with the pants, too. Just a little bit of the airbrush in key strategic placements. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Okay, then over here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that seems about right. I've mentioned before that I've been listening to more and more. I've started to try to avoid listening to like music that I have on my phone at work because I find that it like just stresses me out trying to juggle the mental load of like listening to my own music and just getting my stuff done. But so what I've been doing instead is I've been listening to different radio stations on this virtual radio at work. And recently I found one that just plays Eurobeat tracks from Initial D. And let me tell you, it is an intoxicating little radio station. Like it is absolutely perfect for like stuff where I can just like hands moving, brain off. Very rare situations, those, mind you, but it's I don't know. It's very. I'm glad that I have it there. Okay, is there like an in-between kind of shade that I can use here? It's perfect. No, that doesn't seem right. Okay. We can have a little bit more of this. Yeah, okay. I'm actually really liking that. I'm liking the idea of giving that extra little bit of wide berth here to make it look like the vest has... What do you call? I don't know what to call it. Like, stitches, I guess, would be the right word term? I'm not sure. You know what I do think I need? I do think I need just a little bit of a lighter material as well. Like, first of all, just adding a little bit of this highlight right here would be really good. But also, maybe grabbing something like this and then just going like this in a couple of key areas. Okay. Something like that. And we're gonna go in like this. It's crazy how at the beginning of Art Fight I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try and simplify my style. I'm gonna try and do like quick and easy ones, no frills, no thrills, and just get them done. And now I'm over here just basically doing normal art pieces and I'm feeling pretty great. It's something to be happy about. I don't know, I think I would have also felt unsatisfied if I felt like I wasn't giving it 100%. Okay, then over here, very similar deal. Okay, then over here. No, that's not right. This would go in like this. Actually, you would. I think you would be able to see a little bit of the thumb here, just a tiny bit, like that. I will say I feel like I'm getting faster, but not in a good way. I feel like I'm getting very loose with it, and that is both beneficial and something that I maybe should be wary of. Okay, then over here. There we go. Like this in a little bit too, and there we go. Okay. Right. A couple of other things. Should I take care of that now? Maybe I should. Okay, so the idea here is that we're going to grab like an in-between color here and really highlight it. And it's great that it worked out such that it turned out to be green. I think that's a very auspicious little coincidence. I am going to try my best to like avoid making it too obnoxious. I'm not sure how I'm going to accomplish that, but I'm going to try. Because when this goes well, it goes really well. little bit smaller than that. Okay, and then we blend that out a little bit. Like that a little bit? I think so. Not everywhere necessarily, just in the places where it would make sense for it to appear. I do think what's also going to help blend it out is that little by little it's just going to start picking up bits and pieces of that other shading color. So I think that's going to help blend it out a little bit. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's looking really nice. All right, proceed with the strategy. Okay, then from there we're going to add a little something here. Okay, so far so good. Just a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Just go ahead and start blending those out. This is about as close that I'm ever going to get to having a paint early style, I think. I'm too attached to the hashtag sell grind set. Me when I work in spreadsheets all day. Me when I'm a monk. It is really funny that the word sell came from like monks doing it instead of there being like I feel like like a thing with bars around it, like in that sense of cell, is much more older in society. But they were like, you know what? No, let's name it after the monk thing. But then they also started calling it a jail cell. Do you think that the monks started feeling a little bit resentful about that? Like they were like, we had a good thing going. We had Mendel here. We had all that, all the good name of cells to care for, and now we're associated with like the police. Come on now. I'd be mad as hell. Okay. Maybe just a tiny bit of pure white in a couple of these zones. Okay, there we go. What I might do here as well is I might just grab the neck real quick. Maybe increase the tolerance a little bit. Hang on, Clover or spazimoto. That's the one thing that I should have remembered to do way before this, is I should have remembered to save. I also should have remembered to turn up the tolerance on my wand tool. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a gradient from coming in from down below. And what I'm gonna do then is I'm actually gonna make this a little bit brighter, a little bit more red. Do something very similar to this zone here, to what I did for the shirt. Then I'm gonna blend that sucker out. Very similar deal gonna happen up here too. Okay. Then up here. Okay. Let's see, we've got the golden ornament, we got the bow, and we have the hair still to do. And we still need to do a little bit more for the face. No, that's a bit much. Maybe just slightly less intense shade up here? No, it's gonna be too busy. Alright, back to plan A, which is to say we're going to add a new shadow up around here. Okay, then over here. Oh yeah, that looks mighty evil. So maybe just a little bit less intense of a shade in here. Something like this, too, right here on the bridge of the nose. Yeah, instead maybe replacing it with like this slightly less intense shadow color. Blending this part together. Maybe bringing down the shadow up here a little bit too. Yeah, that feels like the right move. A little bit of a shadow here too. I like the idea of the hair being like this bright green in the midst of all this. Right, gotta texture the eyebrows too. Okay, let's move on to the hair real quick. I feel like that'll be easier to do. Okay, then over here. Going in like this. Perfect. Now we just need some additional colors for the shadow to make it more complete. There's something about this very specific shade of green that reminds me of something, but I can't quite place my finger on it. Okay, then coming in like this. Surprisingly, I do think down here there would be a shadow like this, or part of this here. Ah, no, that doesn't seem right. Maybe like this. No, that seems even worse. Yeah, simple gradient will do the trick. Oh yeah, that'll do. Okay, and then this is gonna come in down like this. Oh yeah, that looks nice and creepy. I don't know, something about this hair is missing. Well, no. I should say the shading is missing something. The hair's there and all accounted for, as it should be. Maybe I flip the canvas. I'm gonna learn something. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay. I was doing too much with it. I was overemphasizing the darkest parts. And I think what could also help is right around here. Adding something like this so we also have a reason to add the color down here. No. Hang on. Something about that doesn't seem right. Maybe we take a look at the shading reference. That's giving me some ideas for the face, but not so much for the hair. Hang on, that might be it, actually. I might be screwing it up by adding the highlights there, specifically. There's going to be highlights up here. There's no light source for them to be coming in from. So what instead we need is something more similar to this. No, that's too flat, too flat. A little bit less like that. Maybe more like this. Something like this would be good. Let's do something like this almost. Yeah, that feels good. I mean, feels better than before at least. I don't know. Let's reflip this and see if that looks any. Something about it is really bugging me. Let's see. I might just have to fix this in post, so to speak. All-knowing gaze, that's right. By the way, I know everything looking villain. I do think one of my favorite things is when, like, you have a character that's supposed to be, like, this very all-knowing, mystical, prophetic person, and nobody is inclined to, like, buy into their bid. Like, they take them seriously, but, like, whenever they're, like, it was revealed to be in the spheres, it's like, alright, sure, Steve, now what do we need to do? Like open acknowledgement that they're useful and they have a role, but that they are like but they are like otherwise full of it. I don't know. I think that's a pretty funny dynamic. Okay, then over here. Okay. Okay, that's gonna come up like that. Alright, I'm gonna need to go absolutely ham shading the golden bell ornament and whatnot. What I might do as well, actually, just real quick, is... Let me take a look here. Okay. I might just step in with the airbrush tool. Way softer than that, and then just like... maybe on a different layer. No. Maybe I do need to blend it out. No, that's not adding anything. Maybe if I just go in with a soft eraser, that might actually do something. No, it's very difficult to get an even texture with a soft eraser. I should stop messing with that. Something about the face is where it all fell apart. Alright. Well, we've already kind of started fighting the bad fight, so... we'll just have to stick it out. It'll come together. Trust. Trust. Oh, yep, that feels pretty good. Hang on. Okay, not bad. I feel like I'm going wrong somewhere, though. I'm sure that's just my paranoia talking. Alright. Okay. Okay, this is gonna come in like this. Okay, we'll add a couple of bits here. Okay, let's use the eraser here and may actually add a secondary shade here. And then up here, we're gonna add the... I like how when I'm trying to like render this, it ends up looking a little bit like a doorknob. I don't know, there's something weirdly charming about it. Okay, wait, no. My brain was telling me to put that triangle there, and I can see what I was trying to do now. And I was trying to make the ambient occlusion off the face. Just the tiniest little sliver of this color. I made a little bit of noise shading here. Maybe even with the highlights here, I could use a little bit of that noise, actually. Almost, but not quite. Just a little bit of highlight up here, maybe. This could stand to be a little bit darker. There we go. Now we just have to do that for all the other golden surfaces. Which aren't that many, actually. It's just the monocle, the two armbands, and I think that's it. Then we just have to add a little something for the background, and we should be good to go. I guess these are technically called sleeve garters or something, but I can't be bothered to remember all that. You don't really see these on anybody except somebody going for like an ironic barber shop / bartender look. I bet they could make a comeback though. Maybe. I think that'll depend on a lot of different factors. To begin with, I think nowadays it's a little bit more fashionable to roll up your sleeves. You need to adjust the kind of sizing of it. Then again, I'm hardly a fashion authority. I wouldn't know. We need to take out this little line here. The cool thing about chains is that you can basically put blobs of any shade anywhere, and as long as you do it consistently enough, it starts to make sense. Observe. And see, that looks mostly shaded. As long as you don't squint too hard. Okay, then over here. Then we need the slightly darker color. I might actually add that to the little thingies here. In a couple of areas, just like right here, for example. Okay, then put this down here. Okay, now we actually just need to add some glass. Okay, so that's gonna be like... It's gonna have to be on a different layer here. Hi, Sentai, how you doing? We're just putting the finishing touches up on the character here. There was a couple of other things that I had planned, but honestly, I'm ready to send it off. As soon as I finish rendering this glass. Okay, grab this, and then we just need to add a couple of streaks here and there. And a lighter streak right around here. Okay, how's that gonna affect the ecosystem? Honestly, that's pretty good. That's all right. I might just need to make it back off in a couple of areas, though. Like, say, right around here. Basically, anywhere that isn't directly touching the eye is where I needed to chill out a little. There we go. That looks nice and clean. Let's shop around it for a couple other blending modes, so... Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a color similar to the one that's on the button there. Perfect. And then on top of that, we're going to add a kind of reddish hue, I think. Maybe brighter than that, more lively. Wait, no, something about that doesn't seem right. Made the whole background red? Okay, what kind of gradients slash effects can we give to this area to make it look less stale? Some of these seem interesting. Got a few options. Surely maybe one of these. Okay, I think I saw one in way all the way back up that I really liked. So, what's this cyberspace one looking like? Ooh, I'm betting this one's gonna go great in some blending modes. Holy crap, that looks sinister. It's perfect! Okay, what we might do is we might just add a parallel line ruler. Running this way, and then we add the darker color. And we'll do that with the gouache brush to give it some nice texture. Okay, what we might do is just bring this up a tiny bit, and then... Or actually, could we use the gouache blender to kind of, hang on. Somewhere around here. There we go. To kind of like make that more gradient-like. Yes, that's exactly it. Still, that seems a little bit... Hang on. First, let me rasterize this. What did that just do? Hang on. Maybe if I put these in a folder and then hit it with a gradient map, we can find a slightly more suitable palette for it. Because I feel like right now it's just... Oh god, that's really bright. Yeah, none of these are particularly... Doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be a little bit different to what we have back there. This one might actually be kind of good for this. It's kind of like grungy, darker color. Lots of different options here. I could just adjust the hue a little bit. Yeah, turn down the saturation, increase the contrast, something like that, actually. And then what I can do is get these together. Add a layer here, make this pure, like bright red maybe? Some kind of color that'll help it stand against the background. Rasterize that, blur it as a Gaussian blur. This background is really ugly. Honestly, even this is a lot better. Let's see if we can make something more workable out of this. Okay, then what we can do is we can go back, brightness contrast, increase the no, maybe not the brightness. But yeah, it's a little bit hard to... Oh, that looks really weird. Oh, that looks kind of neat, actually. Hang on. Merging these two into a new layer. Final boss, yeah. The the unpleasant gradient of a background that I've been brewing. Honestly, this really is just the chickens coming home to roost, isn't it? Well, that's life. Nothing you can do about it. Except keep fighting, I guess. There has to be something we can do. Yo? Yeah, okay. Okay. Maybe this with the retro film effect? Interesting. I don't know what this little X is supposed to be doing. Quite honestly, I keep moving it around, but it's not doing anything. Hang on, maybe I need to like... Yeah, that little light just is not moving at all. Vintage, modern, warm. What I might do is I might just like layer this one on top of the other one and then maybe hit it with a... Because I do think it needs to be like relatively a light background to really make the shadows pop. So maybe if we go tonal correction, brightness, contrast, really bump up the brightness. Okay, and then we just kind of... What I could also do is actually slant this a little bit so that it goes with... but then... I'm not gonna let some stupid gradient push me around. This almost looks like a frickin'... This looks like something you'd get hit with in Earthbound. There has to be something more. Okay. Okay. Let's try this. New layer. Use that same parallel line ruler, but instead of... Oh yeah, no, actually perfect. I was gonna say, instead of having it be horizontal, let's make it be diagonal. But it looks like it beat me to the punch a little bit. Also, I'm just gonna align this with the arms. Just so that I'm not tearing out my hair every 3 seconds. Okay, so what do we know worked? We know that browns worked. We know that yellows and colors of that nature worked. So let's go with that. Okay, so let's go here with the wash. Go back with pointillism, pointillism, whatever. I think the most important thing that art fight teaches you in some regards is those extremes of your ambition. Like sometimes you have this really cool idea in your head and you're like, all right, let's execute on that. And then you're kind of getting there and it's like, all right, this isn't really working. What can we do with the resources that we have? Each one is really kind of like a mini lesson in project management. You know, looking at it charitably. God. Whenever somebody says like this is going to be a great learning opportunity for you, you know that's kind of like the ultimate cope. This is going to be a great learning opportunity for you. It's like the kindest possible way of saying this is going to hurt, but you might be able to get something out of it. And to the credit of the people who say this, you usually do actually get some valuable experience out of it. And I had a very strong learning moment in like the first year and a half of my job, and I can tell you that shit hard carried me for a few months. You know, the benefits and the knowledge that I gained from that experience. So it's not all bullshit. That doesn't make it pleasant. Now, where the hell is that wash blender? And actually, what I might do here, and this feels like a good idea, so I'm going to go for it, is have just a tiny little bit of it kind of go in and out from the sides here. Like it's not a fully stable beam. You know what I mean? We're doing a little bit of like a Black Mesa resonance cascade type beat. For the first time in a long time today, I thought about this guy called Reg Spears, and his particular claim to fame is three things actually: being an Olympic javelin thrower, like he was in a track and field event for javelin. He was representing Australia, I believe. And during like a training camp, he was basically so broke that he hatched a plan with another one of his friends that instead of booking him a normal airfare ticket, they would build him a specialized box and air freight him back home. And to his credit, it worked. He almost died because he had to stop by Dubai and they left him lying out overnight, and he almost overheated to death. But it worked. The last claim to fame is that he became a drug dealer not too long after that, so, you know, not exactly a happy ending. There really are some insanely, weirdly lived experienced people just running around the world at any given moment. People who should have logically died several times, but didn't, by some quirk of fate. I think they have the most valuable stories to tell in a lot of the cases. But I mean, that's just my own preference for storytelling. Well, it's entirely possible that both are true. Okay, then put this over here. Okay, now let's mess around with the hue a little bit. Honestly, I think that's about as good as it's gonna get. Sometimes you just gotta leave that alone. Besides, the shading is kind of hard carrying this drawing. Ain't nobody care about the background. Alright then. I think that's gonna be all for today. I don't have much else to report on, and I've said all I needed to say. Yeah, I'll see you all on Thursday. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Talk to you later. Bye.